for the technological university. So again, I just think there's a lot more, but other councillors have mentioned it, that everybody should get involved, because from the young to the old right up, it's the town, the towns and villages in the county. It's very important that people have their say, and not just for the people living in the county, but for people who are planning to move back to Roscommon. They now have an opportunity to have their say and make the future for themselves and their families. So I'd encourage everybody, and thank you again, Cathaoirleach, for giving me the opportunity to come back in.
Yeah, thank you, Kathleen. Now, the list I had before we went for coffee was as follows, and I propose I'll run with that list unless somebody has other ideas. Next will be Councillor Valerie Byrne, Councillor Tony Waldron, Councillor John Keogh, and Councillor Nigel Deneen. So is Valerie tuned back in?
I think Valerie lost her link.
Sorry, Valerie has lost her link, so we'll have to get her back in again. So on to Councillor Tony Waldron, if he's tuned in. Tony?
Yeah, hello.
Thank you.
Hear me okay? Yeah, look,
Yeah,
thanks very much to the CEO and all his team. They were very helpful in this whole process, and I know an awful lot of work has gone into it, and realise that it is a very, very important document, and fully support what you have to say yourself, Cathaoirleach, with regards to farming, as indeed I do what Councillor Callahan had to say, and the traditional type of farming methods that lots of our farmers are doing in Roscommon is producing really high quality produce, and I think that's wonderful. It's wonderful when you're promoting Roscommon to say that you have people that's doing that type of thing, and certainly it should be promoted. And with regards to Castlereagh and employment, and I know there was a slight increase in the population, but I think there's a wonderful opportunity here now, and I'm not sure if the Office of the Planning Regulator has identified with it yet, but people want to come, they want to live, they want to work in Roscommon. Roscommon becoming far more accessible, broadband, fibre optic, all of that getting better when the N5 is completed. And I particularly know this from students from America that is in Ballintubber for coming for 6 years, and they genuinely love the place, they love the environment, the price of property, and they would have absolutely no difficulty whatsoever in working around Castlereagh or indeed any part of County Roscommon and what it has to offer. I suppose, you know, the IDA obviously don't seem to have quite any interest at all in driving jobs towards Roscommon, and if you take the Harmac experience, it's something that's worth noting. And I think looking at as well, I was there on a Saturday morning when Deputy Doherty broke a bottle of champagne up against the wall to announce a pharmaceutical factory for Castlereagh. The political will was there at that time with Taoiseach Albert Reynolds and so on. I don't think it's there at the moment, but it's in the national interest, I think, that we should be developing towns like Castlereagh. And when I was elected as council 2 years ago, one of the first things I witnessed was the closure of Kilmurray National School. Surely when that type of thing is happening, I think the writing is very much on the wall. As John Healy said, nobody shouted stop. We have now the time to do it, and this document, I hope that the Office of Planning and Regulator will start to have a new and fresh look at the reasons why people want to come and live in County Roscommon. Talking to people recently along the Sluck Valley Way, and a farmer who has a house and is considering building a new one, and he doesn't particularly want to sell the old one because he can see there's an opportunity maybe for Airbnb or short-term letting with regards to tourism, where we have, of course, a shortage of accommodation, or maybe a family member might require that house in time to come. So he just wants to keep that option of holding it. And under the current planning guidelines, I just would like to know, would he be able to get planning permission for a second house? And that's it. And I agree with, of course, Martin Lydon as well when he said the public probably just didn't engage enough. But I think that's up to us now to create more of an awareness that why they should engage. And certainly great to hear that you'll be promoting that both on local papers and indeed in local radio as well. And thank you, Cathaoirleach.
Thanks, Councillor Waldron. Councillor John Keogh.
Thanks, Cathaoirleach, and I want to thank the Chief Executive and the Director of Planning, Martin Lydon, and PO and Mary for the presentation, and for what is a very readable document, clear to understand, and much different, I have to say, than previous ones. There's a lot that others have addressed, so I'm not going to go over the all ground on that particular issue, but I am going to touch on the issue that Councillor John Naughton has raised in relation to the density in Monksland. And whilst in principle I have no difficulty with high density development from the point of view of residential development. I have a concern that, well, at least I can't see the link in the document with the development of community amenities. That's absolutely critical if we are to allow for high density development in the urban areas such as Monksland. And I note that the density per hectare in Monksland is significantly higher than it is in Roscommon town. So perhaps you could point to in the document where it addresses the issue, because I previously put in submissions 10 years ago for the county development plan in relation to the need for putting in place the proper facilities for playgrounds, football pitches in large housing estates where you have high density. So I just couldn't see that link in the document, and perhaps Mary or Martin could point to it. The issue you raised yourself, Cathaoirleach, in relation to agriculture is a very important issue, and of course we've seen a big drive towards dairy, and it is a concern, and we should be quite rightly concerned about that. We need to ensure that we have diversification in relation to agriculture in the county, whether that's in relation to sheep farming, cattle farming, dairy, and coarse tillage. I think there's been a big move away from tillage in many respects, and I'm talking about tillage from the point of view of crops that will be eaten by humans as opposed to animals. So I think we need to tighten up on that. I agree with you in that respect, and I know what Councillor Callan was referring to in relation to the unfinished housing estates. A little bit concerned that we're relying on data from 4 years ago, and the references to 2017 survey. Have we got any up-to-date data in relation to the unfinished housing estates as to where they're at? I think that we should be using as much valid data if we can for this plan, rather than relying on something that's 4 years old. There's a lot of issues. The county is primed, as Councillor Shannon has referenced in relation to the third level institution in Athlone. It is primed for development in the area, and the status of university for Athlone will give added benefit to the general area. So hopefully that will be achieved. Just on the rural housing, I welcome the developments on that. I certainly hope that the planning regulator will be embracing what's been proposed. But we do need to address the issue, and Martin, you mentioned the Ghent or the Flemish case there, which is one that I raised going back 4 years ago now, that I first raised the issue about that particular case. I do welcome the development and think it's a progressive step forward. And we have to do everything possible to encourage people back into our county. The cost of building is going to be a major issue. How that's going to be addressed, I don't know. I think it's a national policy that's going to have to be implemented to try and bring down the cost of construction, to make it attractive for people to come to Roscommon to set up their home and hopefully set up business. So I'll leave it at that for the time being. But I do, if it's possible, to send on a link to the councillors so that we can share it on Facebook or on social media to encourage members of the public in County Roscommon to engage in the consultation process. Thanks.
Okay, if Councillor Valerie Byrne has rejoined us, has she?
Yes, I have. Thank you, Cathaoirleach.
Okay. Councillor Valerie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, like others, I'd like to. I mean, it's a big document, and it's very important that a county has to have a development plan going forward. And all the work that has gone in by our CEO and Martin and Mary and PO and Brian and everybody else. Thank you for all the work you have done. I suppose at this stage it's probably getting a bit repetitive too, but farming was one thing that kind of came up, and that's very important because that was the backbone of this county and of this country coming west of Dublin. But you know, it's always beef farming and sheep farming that we have here, and as others have said, dairying is kind of coming in and kind of taking over now. So there are lots of small farmers that are providing jobs for people and everything else, and I think we need to be mindful of that and keep an eye on things, on what is happening, and look after them. Rural housing, I think there's maybe a bit of legislation going through to ease off how hard it was to get planning in rural areas. So that's a very welcome issue. And, you know, where I know the council are putting it through where you have an old house, and if it can be refurbished, very great. And if it can't, that you're allowed to kind of take it down. The town of villages and back into the core, I mean, that's, and groups of houses, that's all kind of very welcome. But you know, there should be kind of some little bit of flexibility in it too, because there are people that don't want to be in a community. They like their own privacy. That should be considered as well. When it comes to zoning, the best word you have there is flexibility, and I hope that that will kind of go out to each different. Every town is different and every village is different. So I do hope that it won't be just all branded with one thing, that there'll be flexibility there. Climate change. Again, I think you're leaning maybe towards wind. To me, solar panels are the way forward, and I think that's what we'll be pushing for. They're not in people's way, they're on roofs and they're in fields and they're not imposing on other people. And Curturbit there, yeah, you were saying you were joining with Leitrim, and I think that's a very good idea, the two counties working together, and that's the way it should be. And just to be careful that they don't try and take us over like Athlone is trying to take over in Athlone. So jobs is nearly the most important thing for this county, because we're lacking of them in a big way. And I think it's kind of, if we prepare a proper development plan, it's to attract people to come back, set up their businesses here, have the IDA in along with us and working with us instead of kind of against us, which I feel sometimes is the issue. So, and putting money into hubs that we get those people to come back. If they're only coming back for 4 days a week, they're working in the community and spending their money in the community, and all of that is so important. So, yes, I'll finish up there now. It's just so important that we sell our county and put the best plan forward to do that. And just kind of other people have spoke about it too, about getting it out to the public. I think the councillors have a big job to do in this as well, and share in getting this plan out to the people so that they can have their say and not come back afterwards, we didn't know. So I think we have a job to play there as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Valerie. I think I'll go back to the planning team now because I still have 4 more that want to speak after that. Okay.
Just on that, look, policy will always direct what we do with rural housing, and I think the policy is very clear in what needs to happen there. You know, we are looking for people to make Roscommon their main home. We're not looking to create holiday homes, and we have to be very careful, and our policy is careful in that people who are coming, who want to build in Roscommon, it's their main home that they're looking to build. In relation to density, what was mentioned again in Monksland, I just want to be absolutely clear on this. Siting and design and the site that the houses are looking to go on will always be the paramount indicator as to what will take place in relation to development on that site. Just because there's a site, it doesn't mean you're going to put 50 houses on it. The site needs to be adequate, everything needs to be in place. So it's the siting and design that will always take paramount over everything on that. On the unfinished housing estates, we do put in the management report on a monthly basis the number, and I am pleased to announce since 2014 the number of unfinished estates have gone down by about 100. So, you know, they went from 211 to 114. So they have reduced dramatically and continue to do so. And that was because banks opened up balance sheets and were able to work with bond companies and get estates moving. And I think the programme of works that we've got in place there, that will continue to reduce. I'd also like to say in relation to the 2017 year that's quoted in there, that was the last survey that was done by the department. So that was a national survey. But locally, great strides have been made in relation to those unfinished estates. And I think it's an excellent idea that we send councillors on the link so you could be putting it on your own Facebooks or Twitter or Instagram accounts so that we can make the public fully aware, and then you've got that link that you can pass on to your constituents. So absolutely, that we'll be doing that. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin. And three more councillors, Nigel Leneen, Donald Kilduff and Tony Ward. Nigel?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Cahir. Look, and I want to also thank the executive for the draft plan and for all the hard work put into this plan. But I have concerns, and I suppose my first concern is the population projections. I don't believe this goes far enough. I think the NPF and the recess needs to be reviewed in a planned, obviously, in a controlled manner. I think we have to look at where we are at pre-COVID and where we are now regarding population projections. I think people want to live in rural areas, and this is a serious opportunity, I think, for Roscommon County Council, and it would be remiss of us not to seize this opportunity. I think more towns and villages needs to be allowed to grow, especially where the services are available, water, sewer and lighting, and villages and towns are, I believe, are not allowed to grow. And I do understand the council are restricted by what is in the recess, and that in turn what's in the national planning framework. So in fact, the council hands are tied on this plan. In my view, and I know I suppose it's a view of a lot of academics and professionals, planners throughout this country, that the NPF and the recess has to be reviewed with respect of its population projections in light of the current demand and reality of living with COVID. I believe this plan is not ambitious enough to allow for controlled expansion and growth of our towns and villages. And I will be calling on our people, our councillors and the executive to be more ambitious for our county and its growth, and I suppose all in the interest of sustainable development, and that's important. So I propose that we write to the department and the North West Regional Assembly to review the population projections in the recess and in the national planning framework in light of the current COVID reality. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Nigel. The second one is Councillor Donald Kilduff.
Thanks, Claire.
Donald. Yeah.
I suppose I'll be as brief as possible, and firstly thank the executive and all the staff who put all the work into this plan. It's certainly an excellent draft document. It's not perfect, but I think with enough engagement with the community, we can seek to make it perfect. So there's one thing in the plan that I'm particularly delighted to see, and that is there's a very ambitious target. There's a very ambitious target for sustainable energy communities. And there are policies in place, I think, that will support the creation of more sustainable energy communities. There's a target of having a minimum of 50 sustainable energy communities in Roscommon by 2030, which is quite ambitious. It's only 9 years away. There's a lot of work to do to realise that objective. And I think the key word is sustainable. Everything we have in the plan should seek to support sustainable activities within the county. Cahir, look, you earlier had a proposal, and I'd like to second it, that in the towns and villages that there should be an assessment carried out on lands that are zoned residential to see if the owners of those lands do in fact intend to develop those lands. And that ties in with the sustainable communities. There's no point having lands zoned for residential if there's no intention of developing those lands. So I would like to second that proposal. I think that's really important. And then in addition,
agreed. People agree to that, yeah? Okay.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And following on from that, I think lands that are adjacent to serviced facilities should be considered to be included for residential zoning also. I mean, that's at the heart of sustainability, is having residential lands zoned where you already have serviced facilities in place. So I think that's important. But as I say, it's a great draft document, and I'd be very much in support of it going for public consultation. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Tony Ward.
Thanks, Chairman. I just like to thank the CEO of Roscommon County Council, thank the Director of Services, Martin Lydon. I want to thank Mary and Pio and Brian and all the staff in relation to the draft design, and I want to thank them sincerely. It's probably one of the best drafts. I'm around a while as a councillor, and I've seen a few county development plans coming through. I want to compliment all the staff on the draft plan, and I would encourage the general public to come out there and make submissions in relation to the county development plan. In relation to, we spoke about sites there that's adjacent to the services. I think that's very important. I raised that point earlier on in the morning in relation to where you have the services. You should also have adjacent to the services, if you have lands there available. In my view, they should be given the opportunity to build on those lands. In relation to wind energy, I have always, a lot of people might think I oppose wind energy. I do in certain circumstances. I think wind energy should be out at sea or should be located in a very isolated areas. I would have a concern in my own part of the county, South Roscommon, the Topnaconnell, Brideswell and Dysart area, where you have turloughs and you have a huge number of turloughs in that area. But you also have a system in place where you have water from Killeglan Springs. And suppose Killeglan Springs is supplying, 75–80% of South Roscommon. So we have all seen what has happened at Lough Quinchina. So I'd be very, very disappointed if those turloughs were disturbed in any way, because you're looking at a situation where you have mass 186 metres high, and you probably have a depth of another 80 metres into the ground. And I think the solar panels would be, I have no problem or issue with solar panels. And I think there's nowadays with the new houses that's being built, and we spoke about the prices and the costs. Suppose one of the big costs now is in relation to insulation and water to air, where you're talking about adding another 30 or 40,000 onto the cost of a dwelling house. So in relation to that, I think there will be an opportunity if you're looking at the issue there where a contractor can't afford to build houses at the prices that houses are making today. And I'll just finish up on this point in relation to the farming community. Down through the years of my lifetime, the farmers were the backbone of rural Ireland. But I think with what has happened in recent years and all that has been removed from rural Ireland, I think it's time that all politicians in Dáil Éireann, members of political parties and none, get together, or there'll be no rural Ireland to look after in the future. But overall, I welcome the draft plan, and I would encourage the people, the general population of County Roscommon, to come out and make submissions. And again, I want to thank you, Chair, and I want to thank all the people involved in the plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ward. Councillor Leyden, you have a point you want to make in before coming again? Councillor Orla?
Yes. Just two quick points. One, on forestry, I omitted to speak about, and I really wanted to point that I don't believe that we have elaborated sufficiently on it. We need to be more specific on what type of forestry is being advocated. We need clear objectives promoting native tree forestry as opposed to Sitka spruce, which has had a negative impact on rural communities in other areas, in other places in the country, and has not benefited rich biodiversity. So we need to be clear on what is sustainable development in terms of forestry. And just in picking up on Councillor Deneen's point there in relation to the writing to the North West Regional Assembly that both myself and Councillor Naughton presently sit and taking up from the work of Councillor Deneen and Councillor Murphy. It's important to note that the figures that we're dealing with now are no longer, which seems insane to me too, the RSES or National Development Plan figures. The figures we're dealing with are the ESRI housing demand assessment put forward by the department. So while we can write certainly to the North West Regional Assembly, it's really, and I suppose this is where Martin Lydon might be able to come back as our Director of Service, it's been taken out of those hands, and we now have a new way of assessing the housing demand. So just perhaps Martin might come back on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Orla. Martin McDermott, your hand is up, yes?
Thank you, Cahill. Look, just getting back to a point that was made there, that there's no political will towards sorting out employment in Roscommon town, which I usually let these things over my head, but you know, it gets a bit tiresome when you listen to that kind of nonsense now and again. There is political will, absolutely. Where did this 9.2 million come out of? To try and create and develop the Roscommon town. You know, so, you know, when remarks are made like that, you want to think about them kind of things before you start speaking that kind of nonsense, to be quite honest with you. Thank you.
I don't think it's not just when we're talking about the Property Registration Authority and the government not fully honouring their positions. There should be another 160 jobs in County Roscommon. What difference would that make to our communities and schools? It'll make a huge impact. So I'll ask you to take up that, Marty, please. I was trying to get in there just a second, Nigel Denise's proposal, Cahill.
Okay, that's Nigel's proposal now seconded. Okay, I just want this point of clarity. As you know, I raised the agriculture issue, as has all the rest of you, and you know the significance of it. It's very important that we are aware of the difficulties in farming at the minute and the lack of income in many of the enterprises. And if we are to sustain as many young farmers as possible in agriculture in County Roscommon, whether we like it or not, as the trend has been for the last 25 years and probably will be into the future, the only sustainable business in farming now in County Roscommon that can provide an income for two families, the older generation and the younger generation, is dairying. And I think we shouldn't dismiss that as an excellent employer. The critical thing I think that's important is that the environment must be protected, and the economic sustainability of the business must be protected. But it wouldn't be, sometimes there's a perception that if you're intensive, you're environmentally damaging. And it can be, there's no doubt about that. But they also have the opposite side. The lack of farm planning in a very unintensive system can be environmentally damaging as well. But it's critical that we allow farmers to operate, protecting the environment at all times, because that's critical, but that they have the opportunity to be commercial farmers. There is a whole range of farmers that want to go down the road of having a sustainable life, but it may not give it an income, and they'll be part-time farmers. But we need a core of intensive commercial farmers in County Roscommon if we're to keep young people in farming. Just to note that, that's all. I'll go back to the planning section.
I'll come in on a couple of things there. Just on the population there, I think the first thing I'd like to say, and we've been involved in this, it's an evidence-based approach now, which is advocated by the department, but it really is relying on the ERSI as well. And this is now the standard approach. And what I would say to you is those numbers of houses of 2,353, they're also going to impact on the housing targets that are set for us as a local authority into the future as well. So it is actually joined up thinking, and we might not like what the answer is, but it is an evidence-based approach now to bring us all in line, so we're all talking about the same figures. Are they ambitious? I think you only need to look at the last two censuses. If it wouldn't have been for Monksland, it would have been a county in decline with population. So from where we're starting from, as I said at the beginning, no one will be more delighted than myself that we can build 2,353 additional houses and get in a population of over 6,000. I actually think in a 6-year period, with the infrastructural needs that are required, the way the housing market is at the moment, it's a very ambitious target, and it's something obviously that we're going to look to achieve. I actually agree, and I think the plan links to that with Councillor Kilduff. We do want to maximise the services we've currently got available, and the infrastructure that come at a great cost to the state to put in place in relation to water and wastewater infrastructure, as well as electricity, that we do make the maximum use of those. And why this compact growth is something that is to be welcomed and needed in certain parts of the county, not all parts of the county, certain parts of the county, so we do maximise the services that are available. Just in relation to forestry, and Councillor Layden may wish to come back with stronger wording in the submission, but if you could just look at policy RD 5.8 on page 66, and policy CAEE 8.28 on page 114. That they actually, the RD 5.8 in particular, says they encourage the planting of diverse and native species to ensure rich and varied biodiversity value. So we are encouraging it. I suppose sometimes the language we can use, we can only go so far, but if there's stronger wording that comes through the submissions, we'll obviously look at it and be sharing it with the elected members. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we have exhausted the questions there as I would see it, and I want to thank you all for your effort. Just a number of proposals have been...
I have my hand up there.
Sorry,
look, I don't think you saw me there.
No, I didn't. Sorry for that. Go ahead,
yeah, my hand is up there if you can see it.
I see the hand. Yeah, the hand is up.
Yeah.
No doubt, yeah.
Okay. Can I just ask a question there and a clarification?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. Just in relation to the town development plans, other than Boyle and Roscommon, they will be now adopted and considered in the county development plan. So you've also spoken there about lands that are outside the boundary of the town, that they will be considered if somebody comes forward with a proposal for a housing development. Is that written into the plan, or is that just a verbal commitment that's been made here today? That's it.
Okay.
Chair.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kahila, can I come in there?
You can, yeah. Yeah, Martin first.
To be clear, I'm not saying that housing developments would be allowed outside those zones. What I am saying is it doesn't stop individual housing coming in relation to outside those zones. It doesn't mean houses can't be built outside those zones, but we won't be encouraging big housing developments, because even if it was zoned, you'd still take the sequential approach and it'd be too far out from the core of the town where we'd want big developments to be going.
I think Pio said that they would be considered.
No, sorry, Pascal. In terms of housing for the outer core, single infill residential developments will be considered.
Okay.
So that's what was encouraged by members, because we were told by members as we went through the process that there are people who want to live in towns, but they don't necessarily want to live in estates. So we've tried to create that flexibility.
Okay, Pascal.
Okay.
Councillor Tony Ward, you want to raise a question?
Yeah, briefly, Chair. No, just to say that what I call it, I welcome the clustering of houses in villages, and especially where you have villages without a sewage treatment plant. There was no, over the last number of years, there was no opportunity for those villages to develop. And I think under the draft plan there and the cluster of houses, I think there's an opportunity there. But I would say to Roscommon County Council that while a lot of good has been done through the village and urban renewal, and that there has been a huge emphasis on towns in recent years, and I very much welcome that. But I would say to Roscommon County Council, it's now time to start looking at villages. And we have a situation in South Roscommon, we have only one town, we have a lot of villages, and money needs to be spent in those villages to bring them up to the modern standard, such as footpaths, public lighting, and to have a place where people can walk or sight their kids going to school and stuff like that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'll leave it at that. Just before we move on.
Sorry, I had my hand up again.
Oh, sorry, Orla, back again. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, just in relation to the point, I suppose you picked up again on dairy, and I know you're being extra cautious in terms of perhaps there's a constituency out there as well, but in terms of a county and a county development plan and a direction in terms of climate change and climate action, dairying that strips hedges, I'm not saying all does, but what I've seen that strips hedges, that's monoculture, that doesn't encourage biodiversity, is not in the interest of our county. And I know it's hard for people sometimes to stand up and say such things because there can be very serious lobbying on another side. I'm not afraid of that because I think what we have to do is develop a plan that's in the interest of everyone and our future. And I want more jobs in agriculture in County Roscommon, sustainable jobs, more horticulture, more organic, more beef and lamb, what we have that we can brand. But we need to be very careful about the invasive nature of dairying into the county and how it is taking over at a time when we need to be protecting our biodiversity and developing sustainably. So I just wanted to put that on the record again. I know you came back, but I will be making a submission on that as well, and I'm sure others will too. Thank you.
Absolutely, and there's no problem making a submission. The point I want to make is not that I'm pro dairy or pro anything, because I'm not a dairy farmer. I operate in beef and sheep, and I know the income from it. The important thing is that we operate environmentally correctly, and you're quite right. It is important that we keep the aesthetics of the farms right as well, and that's very important. But the critical point I was making was that in the vast majority of cases, unfortunately, and it's because of planning going forward with regard to government policy and EU policy and everything, the only enterprise that is generating anything near a commercial wage for farmers now, unfortunately, is dairying. And if we want to keep our young people in farming in Roscommon, the majority of them, and it's not going to happen, but if we want to keep them full-time in farming in Roscommon, it's very difficult for me with nearly 45 years of farming to see options for commercial farming to give an income to keep people, a family alive, other than dairying at the minute. I hope it changes, because this is a dry stock county, as you say, but the important thing is that whatever we do it bearing in mind environment and bearing in mind aesthetics, but we have to allow the farmers to develop commercial businesses. Otherwise, we're going to be living in what I would call a handout mentality, where we're either part-time, which is very welcome for most farmers, but is not for everybody, or we're going to be living with the state subsidizing whatever income we need because our own business can't do it, despite the best efforts of the best possible way of farming in dry stock or in sheep at the minute. The possibilities of a decent income on an average size farm is very poor. Just to keep that in mind. It's not, I think we're at no different. We don't want to see the county become a one-strand electric fence county. We want to maintain what we have, but we also need to ensure that we allow people to develop commercial businesses. That's all I was saying, really. I think we're on the same tune with regard to how we want the county to look. I have a number of proposals that have been put already. Nigel Ladine proposed that we write a letter about house numbers, and that was proposed and seconded it. Orla Layden proposed that
Sorry, Fairlock. It was population projections.
Population protection, sorry about that. Yeah, thank you for that. Orla Layden proposed that we include a map, which has been agreed. I had three proposals myself. One was purely to remove a section that is incorporated in other sections that is not consistent at the minute. That is the removal of policy objectives 490 to 425, which were pertaining to Hudson Bay. They are already included in other areas. I've been talking to the planning section about that. I've also proposed that we would include Hudson Bay Barrymore in the service settlement category. And the other proposal, which was seconded by Councillor Kilduff, was that we would carry out assessments on towns and villages based on to assess what level of land is actually available for development within the core area, and as a result of that, then we would assess whether we might need to readjust the core area. There were other proposals. Maybe Patricia might have one or two more that she might want to mention, or have we them all there? Have I captured all the proposals that were made?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I heard if you had a proposal there in relation to Hudson Bay, the reference,
yes.
and Councillor Layton, I didn't catch who seconded Councillor Layton's proposal regarding to the landscape map be included. Was it Councillor Janine?
I'll second it if somebody has
Okay.
to second it.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I just didn't catch that at the time. I think Councillor Crosby might have had a proposal about development charges.
Yes.
Can you clarify that.
Councillor Crosby.
It was in relation to development charges being embedded in the county development plan, but there was no seconder for that.
Councillor Crosby.
Tricia.
Yeah.
I explained though in the answer, the development contribution scheme is outside this
Okay,
plan.
that's fine.
Okay.
So,
That's fine. That's not relevant. Okay.
We can't do
Okay. Councillor Janine and had a proposal in relation to writing to the department and the NWRA to review the population projections, seconded by Councillor Waldron, and
Yes.
Councillor Fallon's proposal, seconded by Councillor Kilduff, about the assessment of the lands that were available for development in the villages.
Okay.
Sorry, Cahir, may I come in on that last one?
Absolutely.
Please? Yeah, I think that needs to be something that we put in as a policy, that we will do that work over a period of time. I don't want people thinking that's going to be done in the next 2 weeks. Because it needs to be that it's something that will be achieved over the lifetime of the plan.
Okay, and the plan can be adjusted accordingly if we find that there's a huge amount.
Yeah, because we're going to have to review it anyway, the plan. So we could do that we achieve it before the first review of the plan.
Okay, that's okay. That's it, Patricia?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's all I have.
Cahir, look.
Yeah, is that Nigel, is it?
Yeah, please. Can I just come in here, please?
Go ahead.
Yeah, just on a point of thing here. The RSI it's not a policy document; it's a research paper. That's the first thing I want to say. And the National Planning Framework under the National Policy Objective 1B, Eastern and Midlands region, 490,000 to 540,000 additional people, i.e. a population of around 2.85 million people. The North West Region Assembly, 160 to 180,000 additional, i.e. a population of over 1 million people. So you try and tell me that's ambitious? So that's in the document. That's the policy document for the National Planning Framework. So you tell me about the RSI and say, it's evidence-based approach. This does not stack up these figures. So I'm just quoting what the National Planning Framework and the National Policy Objective 1B is stating. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Is that a statement or a question to me? Sorry.
Well, I was going to make the point that we had a 2-hour discussion on the methodology of arriving at the numbers back about a month ago, I think. But maybe some clarity, Martin, if you can, on that.
Look, the bottom line on it is, it's the methodology that's prescribed. And when you're putting this plan together, that's what the Office of the Planning Regulator are going to be looking at, and the Minister are going to be looking at.
The director of the OPR wrote the National Planning Framework. I'm just.
That's not a councillor. That's not. Is that a councillor? Sorry. Is that a councillor?
I don't know what it is, to be quite honest. Yeah. Go ahead, Martin.
Yeah.
You have the floor, Martin.
Yeah. Just to say, we went through the methodology with the councillors. We were concerned that it was a complicated calculation to present. We presented it to the councillors. The councillors understood what was put before them. We were in a process, and we have to follow that process.
Yep. Okay. I think that was clarified at the last meeting as well. We mightn't like it, but that's the reality, unfortunately, I think. Yeah. Okay. I think at this stage we have had a good discussion. I want to thank my colleagues, all of them, for being well versed on the plan and being clear and concise in their discussions and their questions and their comments. I want to thank the Chief Executive. I want to thank Martin and all at the planning section for bringing this document together in a readable and manageable fashion. I presume we have to have a proposal that we put the plan to a public consultation. Can I have a proposal for that?
I propose, Lawrence.
Proposed by Kathleen Shanaher. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Great.
The plan will go to public consultation.
Agreed. Yeah.
That's agreed. The plan will go to public consultation. The timelines has been outlined by Mary Greer, and the message is very simple now. Our job, the job of everybody else, is get the message out there that the public need to respond and respond clearly, because there's no point in coming back to us in May of next year and saying, well, if I knew about it, we'd have done something different. The plan is now out to the public, it's out to the people. The executive, and I'll be involved somewhat, will do their best to get the message out to the public, but I would appeal to all councillors. We have a great relationship with the press, that they would also do whatever they can to ensure that the message is out there. It's now over to the people for the next 10 weeks. Okay, if nobody has any other comment to make, I want to thank you all for your contributions, and hopefully we can develop the plan as well and as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherlough. Bye now.
Bye bye.
Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Bye now.
Thanks, everybody.